Today in Dubai, it was announced that their food supplies will last for another 10 days, and after that the country may face a collapse because deliveries have been disrupted due to constant shelling from Iran. Moreover, Iran is attacking not only the Emirates. In response to attacks by Israel and the US, Iran is, for some reason, launching large-scale attacks on several of its neighboring countries throughout the region. And while at first Iran justified these attacks as strikes on American military bases in the region, it is now clear that Iran is simply firing chaotically, with missiles and drones that are hitting airports, hotels, and residential buildings. But why is Iran doing this? In this episode, we'll try to figure out the essence of Iran's strategy and whether the affected countries in the region will join the operation against Tehran. My name is Alex Sipecci. This is my own project, Conspiracy Theories, where we debunk conspiracy theories and analyze key global events. My name is Alex Sipecci. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this episode, and leave any comment under this video. This really helps a lot with promoting the content on YouTube, and I will be very grateful to you for that. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. Here is the link. In the description of this video, we post breaking news as it comes in. So, I'll start with a brief overview. In less than a week of war, Iran officially launched more than 800 missiles and 2,000 drones attacking not only US bases but also the countries of the Persian Gulf, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Cyprus. And paradoxically, most of the missiles and drones are not targeting Israel or American military bases, but specifically neighboring Arab and Muslim countries. Is there a strategy behind this? Well, undoubtedly. Tehran is deliberately targeting its neighbors and oil infrastructure in order to provoke a global energy crisis and force the West to make concessions. The calculation is that collapse in the region will lead to during the week, Iran very cleverly avoids direct acknowledgement. In Kyiv, regarding civilian targets in Arab countries, officially only declaring attacks on American targets and using its proxy terrorists. Well, when an Iranian drone struck, for example, Azerbaijan and hit right at the airport in Tehran, they claimed with a straight face that it wasn't them, that supposedly Israel staged the provocation. But the paradox is that despite the threat, potential US allies, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and Azerbaijan are still cautious because of internal contradictions and fear of escalation. However, the situation may change, and now we will move on to a deeper analysis of what is happening. The American-Israeli operation against Iran is involving more and more countries. It's already obvious Iran's retaliatory strikes. Iran is striking almost everyone it borders around its perimeter. Even distant Cyprus is in the crosshairs. Among all of Iran's numerous neighbors, Armenia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan remain so far untouched by attacks. However, the chaotic nature of Iran's strikes gives no guarantees that these countries won't become new targets for the Islamists as well. In addition to direct missile and drone attacks, Iran is also trying to use its proxy forces such as the Lebanese ones. And I believe that this tactic of chaotic attacks on its neighbors has been deliberately chosen by Iran. The idea is to stir up regional instability that would force Israel and the US to seek reconciliation. Let me remind you that Tehran warned about this before the war started. The main element of this Iranian strategy can be considered pressure on the fuel market, strikes on the oil-producing Arab countries, and the blockade of the Hormuz Strait. This situation affects not only the Middle East, but actually the whole world, causing energy prices to rise. This could potentially serve as additional leverage over the US and Israel, since it makes them responsible for the global energy crisis. Tehran, meanwhile, is trying to avoid excessive escalation. Iran, is working quietly. For example, they don't claim to strike Qatari targets. Officially, they say they're striking American ones. And when Qatar is forced to stop gas production for the first time in 30 years, Iran says it's collateral damage, and in general we have nothing to do with it. We only struck American military bases. As for the drones flying at oil and gas production facilities, that's not us. We have no idea what that is. Unfortunately, such a strategy The strategy relies on large stockpiles of strike weapons that Iran and its proxies have been accumulating over many years in preparation for this confrontation. Despite the significant blow to its missile forces and air defense, Iran will continue to pose a threat for a long time, especially for its closest neighbors and their oil production infrastructure. At the same time, Tehran is deliberately escalating even with those countries that initially expressed skepticism about the American operation, and that's putting it mildly. So, Iran has already turned the Arab monarchies against itself. For example, Saudi Arabia. Just a little over a year ago, they literally signed, a pact of reconciliation, diplomatic cooperation, and so on. You'd think, why? Why do this? On the other hand, Iran struck Oman. It has already attacked Omani oil tankers. Actually, Oman is the only country in the region that condemned the start of the US war against Iran. And Iran even struck Azerbaijan, whose leader was the only one to offer condolences to Iran over the death of Khamenei. In addition, facilities belonging to European countries also came under Iranian attacks, despite the obvious lack of support for the operation from Europe. Further escalation of the strikes risks increasing hostility and uniting those armed by the US and Israel. So, at first glance, the logic just doesn't make sense. They could all unite. But the point is to hurt as many countries as possible, hoping that no one will want a big war and will pressure the Americans to stop the war. But the possible responses of the attacked countries towards Iran still remain in question. Extremely complicated relations between the states of this region can interfere with a coordinated response to the actions of the Iranians. Well, in particular, the victims of Iranian attacks are Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And these are two countries that seriously compete with each other for influence in the region and beyond. Well, for example, in Africa as well. These two countries uniting against Iran would look, to put it mildly, strange. Azerbaijan, which has recently become a new target of attacks from Iran, has an excellent relationship with Turkey, and a very good one with Israel. But at the same time, Turkey and Israel have extremely strained, if not outright hostile, relations with each other. Therefore, the question remains whether the countries affected by Iran will be able to set aside their old disagreements to address more pressing issues. It's an open question. And here it's important to understand that the level of threat from Iran may still outweigh the hostility between them. And here, the regional factor plays an important role. This is a purely Eastern region. If you allow yourself to be beaten, both your enemies and your citizens see it. This undermines internal support and can also boost your enemy's confidence, like, oh, you can hit the Emirates, hit Dubai, and nothing will happen. That's why they say it's better to strike back than stay silent. That's why it's possible that some countries might, let's say, unofficially join the US-Israeli operation against Iran, but without making it public. Well, for example, Azerbaijan, which I remind you basically shares one army with Turkey, could be such a case. President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan has already declared that his country is not participating in the operation against Iran, but reserves the right to self-defense. But Azerbaijan has already put its troops on combat alert, and Aliyev stated directly that Iran will answer for an attack on Nakhchivan. It should also be understood that the United States is obviously interested in attracting additional participants to the anti-Iranian coalition, because after the bombings, a ground operation is needed. In recent days, there has been active discussion about involving Kurdish armed groups from Iraq who could launch an offensive into the territory of Iranian Kurdistan. But if the monarchies of the Persian Gulf do not support such an offensive, it will be very difficult for the Kurds. That's why the Kurds aren't rushing yet. They claim they're ready to attack but aren't acting. And we shouldn't forget that Turkey, of course, is extremely irritated by the Iranian attacks, but is also closely watching the actions of the Kurdish militias whom they are also fighting against. And for now, the latest iteration of the American-Iranian conflict is tending towards significant escalation, turning into a real regional war. This is a deliberate move by the Iranian leadership, which is primarily seeking to preserve itself in this confrontation, and to preserve this Islamist regime as such. In other words, what the consequences will be is no longer important. For them, that's a secondary issue. And for this purpose, they are attacking almost every country within their reach while simultaneously destabilizing global oil trade. And now, it's in the interests of all countries and regions to unite after all. But for now, as we can see, everyone is waiting. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. Friends, if you found this episode useful and interesting, you can support our YouTube channel financially with a donation or paid subscription using the links and details in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screens. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.